It'll correspond with the subsequent paragraphs. So if you outline your reasons in your thesis statement, those reasons should align with the topic sentences in your body paragraphs. Um, Also, you want to make sure that we can get a sense of who you're writing to during this. So, for instance, we talked about how to make sure that the audience understands that they are the audience. You know who your stakeholder is in your thesis statement. So, if we're writing to parents, if we're writing to government officials, it might be beneficial to mention those stakeholders in your thesis statement to show that you're writing directly to them. In terms of audience, as you can see, I messed up on here, but it's important to understand what they value. We'll start there. So when we're thinking about audience, a great thing to consider is really what they value. That goes into this idea of a solid conception of audience. So a lot of people were talking about, they have a specific audience they're writing to, but some of them were still a little broad, and we have a hard time figuring out ways to appeal directly to that audience. So broad is fine, but ways to narrow it down to influence your audience appeals. You can still find ways to do that, whether it's in terms of age, demographic, geographic, socioeconomic status. If we're writing to meat consumers, who's going to be consuming meat the most often? Who's that narrow audience that we'll probably need to appeal to? And you might be making some assumptions, but these assumptions will still work to limit your writing and kind of really get you focused on specific values and beliefs that these hold on to. So if your audience is still a little broad or murky at this point, try to figure out ways which you can still narrow it down, age range, socioeconomic, things along those lines. Cool. So in terms of evidence, make sure that there are multiple, make sure there are multiple pieces of evidence for one reason. So I've seen a couple of reasons where it's just one reason and then one source that's supposed to act as the spokesperson for that reason. Be sure to be drawing in different pieces of supporting evidence for that one reason, and these should come from different perspectives. If you remember that texting while driving paragraph, each reason is supported by evidence coming from different sources and different perspectives that formulate and that support that reason in a very solid way. And this goes to heighten your credibility as a writer because it shows that you're a well-researched and well-read researcher. If you are finding evidence that is relevant but does not support your working thesis, consider shifting your thesis to reflect these research findings. So for instance, if all your reasons are supporting and really targeting one specific audience, go back and change your thesis. Remember, this is all that recursive nature of research happening right here, that, as you start to write your paper, you might have to go back and shift who you're writing to a little bit once you gather and synthesize the evidence. And so this slide will make a lot more sense if you watch that synthesizing evidence video about how to bring different perspectives together in sort of a conversation-like manner. In terms of development structure, a lot of people are arguing that a lot of people's arguments have to do with context, and so establishing context is a really important strategy to establish your credibility as a writer as well. You have to introduce your audience to what you're writing to show that you are in the know about this conversation as well. You have to show them that you are aligning with their beliefs and their knowledge about the issue, but that you're bringing in some other knowledge as well. To show that you're a credible source with this, to show that you mean business when you're talking about these issues. So make sure that you establish that context first, whether it's in the introduction paragraph, which I'll be touching on shortly, or in that first paragraph where you really outline what's been going on. And it's just a nice logical development thing. So you start out contextually. You start out to present the issue as it is, present the current takes on it, the audience's perspective, and then you move in to show what your argument is. So you've established the base, and then you're working off of that in a logical format as far as structure goes in your paper. Like I said, context is not always the reason. It is the basis for the argument. That's why it needs to happen kind of first.